Let's see. I think we can have some light, fellas. Is that light connected right there? Let me see. Which one is this one here? There we go. Thank you. We got a little light shining, family.
Can you see it good?
Yep. Peace, 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 family. We got the queen in the back. She just chilling.
Peace, peace.
But I hope everybody having a good time. Islam fam. I also want to before we get started, man, I just want everybody to just work with me and be patient, man. We have a small team, which is myself, my empress, and a couple of my young students. So we're constantly putting things together, and our library list is finished. The syllabus is finished. And so we're going to highlight a couple of books today as well. And we're just going to teach some scholarship, man, because that's what this science is all about. You know, more science is not choosing sides. It's about being a scholarship and understanding the esoteric and the exoteric understanding of all sciences. We have to understand that theology and masonry is the two thoughts. So we have to get things right in a right perspective, Moors, especially when we see other nationalities, and no matter if it's your own brother or sister wearing a fez in clandestine, you have to understand what certain things is all about. And we can't be afraid to study, because that's what we supposed to do this. I tell all my students and everybody that's connected with me, especially we here in Arizona, we had a teaching today at the YMCA. We do like pop-ups, and I'm asking people to be part of it. This is real scholarship, and we debunk. It's just what it is, Eurocentric propaganda, not just with no religious dogma, but with peer-reviewed scholarly research, something that we can stand on. No science comes from the West. It's just what it is. That's the thing in college and even public school. They have a thing called the reading list. That's why it's called pseudo academia. That's why a lot of the pens are rewritten. And when a person telling you this is a translation, it's not a translation. It's a replacement. And it's not a transliteration. That's how we get caught up in linguistic apartheid. Someone giving you their arbitrary explanation of things, but they're not giving you the etymology and the denotation of the word. And we do this to stand on what we know as scholars, as master Masons, as historians, as educators, as Moors, which is our nationality in America, not Negro, black, and colored. Ask any teacher or professor, and coming from the right manifestation, what were Negro, blacks, and colored called before 1825? Go get a Shakespeare book, Othello the Moor. I mean, we're not talking about things that can't be proven. You can get in the biblical books, you can go to the 1599 Geneva Bible, Moors, and every part in the Geneva Bible, the 1599 Bible, where it says Ethiopian, it clearly says Moor. Where it talks about Ed Medelec. Just like, and when you get Spanish beans, it says Negro beans. Negro is not a nationality. That's just explaining the hue of the beans. But that's not a nationality. That's too simple. So before we even jump in this teaching, man, I want to put my benediction in the atmosphere, and I'm going to just highlight a couple of my books that we gathered and compiled and show brothers and sisters how to, if they want to order them and donate, you know, it'll be great because we do a lot in the community. And we're going to highlight just a couple of books that we print, and I challenge my brothers and sisters to look up the cost of these books and see what they cost. And you can see why when I say things are elementary, not saying to belittle or nothing, but this is elementary when these things talks about the elements. And this is elementary wisdom. It's just been locked up. And we can't look at other people as the enemy. We have to look at our own that hide things from us in history. Those that sell out for $1. When you really look at history, no one can come against you unless a person willingly gives you up. And that's all through history, not just one part. We're talking about the big six. We can go all through history. So it's just what it is, family. But we're going to talk about, first let's put this benediction in and my Moorish prayer in the atmosphere. And this is by one of the Moorish prophets, Noble Drew Ali. We're going to talk about another Moorish prophet. And I challenge brothers to study. I'm not here to get you caught up in any religious dogma, because the level and the degrees that I'm at, when we talk about adepts, when we talk about philosophers, we understand, and master masons, we understand what's above is below, and we connect the stars to the brain. Everything that's in that biblical book, they took that meant something inside, had to do with your body, and turned it into physical attributes, and changed a lot of them into Greek names. That's why if you have the old dictionaries like the 1828 Webster Dictionary, it'll clearly tell you in the 1828 dictionary what the Hellenistic language is. And I tell brothers and sisters, I'm not no religious person. I'm a Moor. That's it. But I'm also a scholar and a teacher. And I have real degrees. No fake stuff. I don't tell a person what the prophet taught. I can take it way farther than that and show you where the system come from. And that's why on our cards we respect and obey all the laws and the prophets. If you respect divine prophets, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, and Confucius, and you don't respect the prophets that brought you to science, that you know that existed, you're a damn fool. And excuse my candor. Moors. If we're going to say just be a scientist and a philosopher. If you were taking things and say, okay, these figures, can I prove these particular figures real? If you in your lower element, then maybe, not understanding that's talking about yourself. Then you don't believe in the physical beings that taught the stuff that you can trace back and find these brothers in the early times. That really don't make sense. We don't pick and choose. There's so many brothers that was back then that pseudo academia don't talk about, like the black Hitler of Harlem. Research these brothers. Everything, their tactics wasn't right, but look what he was doing. He was in New York during the time Noble Drew Ali, all these brothers, Clarence X, all this time, like, hey man, standing in the so-called Jewish communities, like, hey, brothers need jobs. He created jobs for people. And, and with having the brothers pay him $1, for him to find them jobs, the brother had a plane, everything. And he crashed his plane. But we can get all deeper into wisdom, understand the science, what I'm saying, man. We're supposed to be philosophers and educators and teaching our children and our wives that they're not Negro, black, and colored, that we don't destroy anything. I can show you that the Asiatic, the black man, whatever you want to call it, misnomer, I'm not here to argue with that, is the father of civilization. Because we can play the language game. We can play the language game and we can trace everything back to one particular region. We can trace everything back to the river and just connect things from scholarship, from love. And the only problem you'll have with, and I hate to say this, is with a Negro, black, or colored. You won't have this problem in scholarship and academia, because I guarantee you, academia, no. I guarantee you. So let's get my divine prayer by one of the prophets, and that brought things back to the brothers and sisters, which is Noble Drew Ali in America. We have to understand what angel mean and what prophet mean. It's so tough, But let's follow Islam, Islam. But I hear, and when I say Islam, that's why I love scholarship, because when a person say Islam, what do you mean Islam? Everybody know we're not talking about nothing outside of ourselves. We're not talking about Al-Islam. We're talking about Sufism. We're talking about Zoroastrianism. You can trace things that connect God and man as one. So when we say Islam, just like the gram, just like the 5-point star, we can connect these things. Arm, leg, arm, head. Just like Yahweh, YHWH. I can show you all that in the hieroglyphs. So we must explain things if you understand who you are. So when we say Allah, that arm, leg, arm, head, that's manifestation of yourself. I can show you the Centennial Man on my other teachers and my metaphysical teachers that I grew up with in metaphysics by one of the great teachers I studied under, which is Dr. Henry Clifford Kinley. And you can see that you are the pentagram. But that's deeper when we talk about the constellations. But let's proceed. But this is what the prophet, he warns all Muslims, governed order to read the proclamation at each meeting. January 15, 1929. I hereby inform all members that they must end all radical agitating speeches while at work or in the streets. We are for peace and not destruction. Stop flashing your cards at Europeans. It causes confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be of severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And when these principles are violated, justice must then take its case, Moors. Remember this. Any member or group of members who hold malicious feelings toward the temple or the prophet, we have to explain what that means towards the temple of the prophet. That's esoterically and exoterically. That's esoterically and exoterically. When I say any member who or group of members who hold malicious feelings towards the temple or the prophet, that's eso and exo. We have to understand this connection. We talk about the constellations. When I talk about in your Sukul 7 Quran, your Moorish Quran, chapter, I think it's 5, verse 12 to 20. It talk about our carpenter tools, the chisel, the plummet, and then you say this is not high masonry. You don't understand the Kemetic science. You don't understand the 7 Kemetic principles, connotated, hermetic, connotated, Kabbalah. This is the science that was taught, man. You have to understand what the true alchemy is. You have to understand what the arcana is and what diet the Moors have. When I say the Moors are under a biblical diet, it's the Hebrew diet. It's just facts. I mean, any Moor should know this. Or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement. Now, the next thing you must understand, what is the divine covenant of the Moorish movement? I'm going to build on that. I have the literature. I gathered and compiled the literature. You can read it from an unbiased place. And I guarantee you, you will agree. Be like, yes, 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 yes. If you're coming from a religious dogmatic place, then we're not talking about a belief. Because right in belief, you have the root word, which is belie. And we can care less about a belief system. Because man-made religion is under a certain belief system, something that can't be proven, something that man proven. But science is something that can be proven. We can connect things to the stars. I can show you everything in the stars that's right in your physical body. That's why the biblical scriptures is written allegory, parable, analogy, symbology. It's all there. But we have to understand the language and break those language down. When a person giving you their arbitrary a pseudo, how can I say, gibberish explanation of some version of something that they take literal. But any member the divine covenant will receive their any member who or group of members who hold malicious feelings towards the temple of the prophet or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement will receive their reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. For all our unjust deeds, Moors. All true Moors will and must obey the law. Will and must obey the law as laid down to us by our prophet. And if we lose confidence in the prophet, we should turn in our card, our button, cease wearing our turban, our fez, and return to the state where we were found. This is a holy and divine movement. Holy and divine. Now, what have you heard or somebody say that this is a holy and divine? It's principles. We have to look what holy and divine mean. We're saying we're under something and we don't know what holy and divine mean. That is unheard of. That's why when I speak on wisdom and we say 360 is just the total of material wisdom, but 720 is the sum total of material and spiritual. You must master your higher self and become the circle in a circle. This is elementary. This is elements. This is the elements that we're explaining. This is the Gnostic teachings. But this is a holy and divine movement founded by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And if the Prophet is not right, the temple is not right. And once again, that's esoterically and exoterically, Moors. The Prophet is therefore sending out a divine plea to all Moorish Americans that we do our part in protecting the temple. Esoterically and exoterically, because you are the temple. Just like in the biblical scriptures, what he said, the tabernacle built without hands. I can show you everything in that tabernacle that he's explaining to man, the chemical makeup of man, 666, 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons. Everything that they put in that physical temple explains everything in your body, from the most holy place to the quarter roundabout. And if we don't understand this metaphysical science, then we're not mastering our higher self, because we don't even understand who we are. And we arguing over isms. It's not what this is about. But this is a everlasting movement founded by the Prophet Noble Ali through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. And when we talk about Allah Moors, if anybody is under Al-Islam, that's them. But anymore, no. You can't be an adept. You can't understand this higher science if you don't go through the shrine. And I'm not talking about no European masonry. Because 32 and 33 degrees is snowman wisdom. No disrespect to no Prince Hall or nobody. You know what I'm saying? You get the 32 and 33 degrees. You're supposed to get that when the fez and the turban is placed on your head. I have to explain clearly, verbatim, with a silver tongue and eloquently, when we wear our fez with not in clandestine. And when I tell Moors, everybody know. You don't have to argue with your brother that's wearing a fez. You should talk to him clearly, just like when I talk to all different nationalities, when I'm on college campuses, when I see Europeans, and I'm using misnomers that people like to use, Europeans, Chinese, they know what it is, and I talk just like I'm talking. When I got my master's degree in ancient history and first century history and first century religion, a lot of the professors didn't like my candor, but I still graduated with honors because I proved from peer-reviewed scholarly research some things that they try to lock up. But I pulled it all out and said that if the carbon, if the pen doesn't match the carbon, which is the carbon dating, you must change the pen. And I proved that the pen was changed all through history. I showed writings that they changed Muhammad from short and dark to tall and white, all in the Bukhari Hadith, old stuff that's centuries ago, that's in the Library of Congress. There's so much information in there, and also at the Philosophical Society that I'm a part of. But when brothers Noble Ali, I'm going to show stuff about the ancient mystic shrine that brothers brought. But our prophet did travel through the shrine, through the compass and the square. He used the compass to keep all the carnal desires under control. Picked up the square to straighten out all the crooked places of fallen humanity, to make the corners of our conduct square. That's in our Circle 7 Quran, Moors. That's talking about just like the 12-step ladders, just like the so-called 12 apostles in the biblical scriptures. We're talking about science. And then we could connect that to the constellation, to the stars. You got the sun, which is the so-called son of God in the middle. And you got the rays off of it, which is 12 what? January, February, March, April, May, June. We connect this science. It's science. That's how our prophet traveled, through the Masonic order until he became a noble. Then he entered Islam. Now, this is what we have to clear up and we have to debunk. This means Moorish Americans should seek to become Masons and Shriners? And the answer is no. Why? 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 Because, and you can ask anyone, there is no longer any need for this, because the prophet, if you're under the right auspices, if you're studying, you will get the 32 and 33 degrees. I get the 32 and 33 degrees. That's in your divine instructions, number 2. Number 2, Moors. When certain things are placed, what? The tarba and the mithra, which is the turban, is on your kopta, which is your crown. That's when you have the science. It's supposed to be something under this fez. Noble. It's supposed to be a way that we operate. We're supposed to be able to break this science down eloquently to our kids, to our children, and show all through history. When I say women are adept, we don't come from no biased place, Moors. I come from no biased place. I come from science. I have family members that's Masons. My dad was a Mason. We sit and talk for long hours. He just went back to Michigan. I promise you. So, where I come from, wisdom. When you graduate from college, they don't tell you what your your hat without the brim on it and that tassel is all about. But they rush you out of there. That's why I say I created my own school the right way, because a lot of things are just not going to be able to be taught on universities. But follow me, Moors. Who amongst the high Rome enter Islam by practice? We know that's the Masons. This is simple science. I have brother. We don't argue over no wisdom. That's why we understand when we call it certain things sons of Muslims. There's a certain thing that we must understand. So I hope we know that, Moors. That's why we don't have to search for certain things outside ourselves. because the key to salvation rests in our hands, Morris. Right? A key to salvation rests in our hands. And even though a portion of our nature sometimes is weakness, instability, inconsistency, there is still the greater part of our nature that is what, Morris? Divine. That's why when I say may Allah protect thee, may the YHWH protect thee, guide thee, preserve thee, lengthen our age, and give us everlasting peace. We gotta be scholars, man, and this is what we teach. We teach what words mean. We teach what all that means. So, let's proceed, family. So as we just shared a little bit of history of the sciences and things which we must connect, books, and then we're going to get into the lecture. If anyone want to give a donation to our literature books, they're only $20, man, a donation, and it's tax exempt. It comes with a tax exempt receipt. If you're serious, all you have to do is download the Cash app and then ask for our number. I'll give it to you because I just don't like to share it with people that not serious, and you can research the literature for yourself. A lot of my literature is peer reviewed and can be used on college campuses. And that's why when I say things are elementary, I've done the work, and able to get a lot of things that debunk Eurocentric propaganda and pictures and history from museums. So the first book we gathered and compiled is Black Scholars Who Debunk Eurocentric Propaganda. And that's going to be the topic of our lecture today. 14 famous Asiatic scientists in history, where I show all through history, old, new, present scientists in history. The coloring book, I Am Royalty coloring book for the kids, for something they can see themselves in royalty and color, Our healthy living and eating book, to where I show a lot of my workout routines, and I show a lot of smoothies that I use, and a lot of herbs and the spices and the teas that I use, the natural things. When I tell brothers, you don't need anything fake, any GMO. All you need is the minerals from the earth. No genetic modified organism is better than Mother Earth. Delectico vegan treats, where we have vegan treats, where my empress, put a snack book together, because I like snacks, but I like to eat, try to do it healthy as possible, without that much dairy. You are what you eat. Eat good, look good, and feel good. This is our vegan cookbook my empress put together, man. She makes some great dishes. Now here goes some of the science books. The interpretation of the divine creed of Moorish Islam. This is what Moorish, when I say all you have to do is study it and read it. And we're supposed to write our literature and the history of things. Sufism and the triple role of the adapt chamber, featuring the command and adapt manual and the use of our carpenter tools. When Moorish say they adapts, then they should understand what the triple role of the adapt chamber is, and be able to display it eloquently with a silver tongue, standing on your square. Because this is science, man. The essence of chemical element of Moorish archival. And these are things that we gathered and compiled in the years, and we're getting ready to get it published. I'm going to self-publish it because I don't want to share my publisher rights with a foreign company. So it's been taking me a while because I've been doing donations, and I'm going to get them all put together like this. And, with everything, the picture and everything is going to be just like this. So we getting that together, man, and prayerfully, man, everybody just hopefully keep me in your spirit, man, and help me make that manifest. But we're going to make it manifest anyway. But the Moorish American Light of Ali and the Moorish Adapt Study Guide, the House of Ali Mysticism, the Egyptian Adapt Prophet and Angel. And that's the last one. But we got some other ones, man, coming together, because we're going to compile a lot of those books to like 3 books. So before we even get into this teaching, Morris, I want to show you something. And while we teaching and while we're debunking Eurocentric academia, I want you to be like, okay, I see how much those cost. And this is why I say, man, I ask for people to be members and donate, because the scholarship and the history that we have, a lot of brothers and sisters and even teachers don't have, because they just have it. And sometimes it costs too much. And I tell a lot of people, just Googling things is not always factual. You must be able to get the research, and it's things that's written all over history, pictures. When I get my other history, I'm waiting for it to be printed. I'm gonna show you some of the Eastern wisdom with all the hieroglyphs, everything, and the statues. It's been in it from Harvard and Cambridge. That's where my stuff come from. I have one of my mentors. He's a professor at Harvard and Cambridge. He's like, well, everything is locked up here, and I just got my passport, so everything is there. All the wisdom, all pictures in the museums, everything. But anyway, one of the books that we do on our print press is Peter Lambert Wilson's Sacred Drift. This talks all about Noble Drew Ali, all about it when people, all about this man. Let me see, the Golden Age of the Moors. We print these. So we have things, man, for our youth can speak on. From scholarship, when they say, man, we don't come from just no slavery. When we show things. And now, the Forgotten Cause of the Civil War, a new look at the slavery issue. I'm gonna give you a little highlight about that. See, this is things that we're supposed to show our babies and things. 103 amazing facts about the black Indian of the Western Hemisphere. Research this research this wisdom and what's in there. And then that's why we stand strong of who we are. The Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. When I say, man, things that's been written a long time ago. You don't have to listen to nobody or get into spookism if you're a scholar and a philosopher and understand who you are. Everybody respect it. But like the Forgotten Cause of the Civil War, Moors, is one of the things that's puzzling about that history of the United States is how the Civil War Moors could be fought and won to end slavery, but full civil rights not be granted to the blacks until a century later. And that's what Tanzer's Forgotten Cause of the Civil War suggests, that one of the major contributions to tension between the North and the South that caused the Civil War was white slavery, or the perception of slavery by Northerns as a personal threat. When you can research the history called white cargo. Research the history of white cargo. We're going to demonstrate this. This is a lot of, I'm just giving a lot of research that I did on the college campus. And when I say I don't come from nobody's place, I come from scholarship, and a lot of stuff I just speak on is the research I've done on college campuses. And they're all filled with different nationalities. Man, I had a professor came from, he said Asia, to hear my research, and it's just what it is. But anyway, but also Tenzer begins with the legal definition of slavery and the terms such as white, black, and mulatto. When I talk about white as a legal status, we must understand that in law, and that's a whole nother subject, but which often differ from social definitions. Moors. Like it was a rule, the partus sequitur ventrum rule made the offsprings of a slave mother slaves, regardless of their color. No slave could be white, of course. So white slaves were classified as what, Moors? Mulattoes. Chapter 2 looks at the consequence of the rule, the presence of white slaves in the South. Also, Moors, in that research, you can find that Tenzer makes no attempt to prove quantitative figures here, stressing instead the accessibility of accounts of white slaves in the North. Notably, advertisement for a runaway slave who could pass as white. However, many of them were in the ideas of slaves, right? Indistinguishably from free whites was widespread in the North. That's why you can also research the history of Abraham Lincoln when he defended the Moor in court. This is things that's in history. I have books in my library. You can research that Abraham Lincoln defended the Moor in court that proved that he wasn't black because or Negro color, because you couldn't own land and everything. So these are things that we teach. It's just a lot of stuff is in history or our story, whatever you want to call it. But chapter 3 looks at Southern racial theory, in particular to the fabrication of figures for in the 1840 census. The 1850 Fugitive Slave Law allowed runaway slaves to be reclaimed without due process. When I talk about due process in the court of law, yeah, you can proclaim something, but as you proclaiming it, if things happen, will you have due process? So these are things in the full color of law you must understand. When brothers say I teach civics, and I say, well then what's civics? What's the etymology? What's the root of civics? Because if you don't understand what civics is dealing with people. And then if you say you're dealing with civics and you don't understand the difference from local, state, federal, and all those different jurisdictions, when I tell Moors, driving without a license, with or without, has nothing to do with no federal law. That's a state law. But that's a whole nother story. The political power of the South and events such as the destruction of Missouri comprised and the Dred Scott decision also raised fear of slaves being extended into the territories of the northern slaves. When I talk about the slavery in Illinois, it's just a lot of history. And this is what we teach. And it's not coming from anybody's place. Also, I like to share, like, even with the more science, when I say, brothers, we don't bang. Science is something that can be proven. And we don't get so caught up in a person where we forget the wisdom that's inside of their hippocampus and their brain. You know? We can, like Abdul Hamid, all these brothers you can look up in history. And you can, and Abdul, and when he came with that science, when he came and he was debunking a lot of the Prince Hall masonries when he came to the States. I hope, don't we know that? Morris, this science is all come from the East. Right? We know about our prophet Noble Drew Ali, but they only try to share one person. But that's why I love history, because you can trace things back to history and say, man, our brothers was teaching the science, and we can, as we go on in history, we can start connecting and say, he was brothers in all parts of history that was bringing things to us. And respecting all the laws and the prophets. Like I was saying earlier, like for instance, we know about our prophet, Noble Drew Ali, that brought something to the United States, right? We know that. But watch this. It was also the Islamic missionaries who moved up in that movement and Mohammedan masonry and spoke of mystical and Egyptian connections, right? We got to understand what this science was. This was a man called Abdul Hamid Suleiman, right? This person, he was a prophet, he was a scholar teaching the same wisdom as our prophet taught in the same time and a little before then. When I say, as we study history and research, man, you can see this science is universal. Knowing who you are is universal. That's why when you see the European and Prince Hall and certain other people, you see Islam and Arabia and Mecca on affairs with the Asiatic black woman with the knife and everything on it. Yeah, the star and the moon is symbolic, but we have to understand the symbology. Right? I hope we know this. When we talk about inspiration, you know, I'm sure the prophet had an idea or knew something about this. Hey, Mom, how you doing, Mom? But I'm sure the prophet, and that's why I say we don't gang bang. If that's the case, we're not going to be scholars and say, okay, well, I'm going to deal with Amos Wilson, but I'm not going to deal with Henry Clark. Huh? Or I'm going to deal with, say, Marcus Garvey, but I'm not going to deal with Frederick Douglass' wisdom. When I say you have to examine the man, everybody, like we talk about Du Bois, and see what he was doing, how he was trying to combat Marcus Garvey. So no one can come against you unless someone that's already in house is allowing that to happen, Moors. We can teach our own wisdom. There's no reason to be arguing with no one if you're a scholar. But the Mecca Medina temple and the research, it talks about Mr. Solomon and how he was going by Abdul Hamid Solomon. And you can research and you can look up news press August 1922 after he attended the African American Masonic Convention held that month in Washington, D.C. At the convention, he formally presented himself to the leadership of the main factions of the African American shrine community known as the Ancient Arabic Order Nobles of the Mystic Shrine. And I'm going to show you something, and you ask me and you tell me what you see. When I say we talk about the science, I just told you a little history, and I'm going to show you pictures of Noble Drew Ali, and I'm going to show you the old Noble Shrine literature. Now let's read this one more time so we can connect history when we can see, okay, we will honor and obey and respect all thought processes. We don't latch on to one thing when all these brothers and sisters is amongst us. We honor them. Who? All the prophets, all the messiahs, the ones gone and the ones in the flesh. That's keeping the legacy going. Teaching from no biased perspective. Now watch this. Let's recap this. The findings presented here will show that it is highly probable that Abdul Hamid Suleiman and his movement influenced our Noble Drew Ali before 1922. No disrespect to no one. The Mecca Medina Temple and Dr. Prince D. Solomon, the man going by the name of Abdul Hamid Solomon, appears to have first achieved recognition in the public press in August 1922 after he attended the African American Masonic Convention that held that month in Washington, D.C. At the convention, he formally presented himself to the leadership of the main faction of the African American Shriner community, known as the Ancient Egyptian Arabic Order Nobles of the Mystic Shrine, the AEAONMS. Now, I'm going to show you a picture. That's why we connect and we just do history. And I'm going to show you some other history. Because we only 36 minutes in. We do a teacher for an hour. We in school. I'm going to read this to you. They say that's Master Farrar Muhammad. We're not going to get into that because when people get into religious things, they get besides themselves. But I'm reading a picture to you. We're not even, this is the Moorish Science Temple of America, founded one of the days when they had the celebration, October 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1928. Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the founder. I'm reading the picture. You can go whatever you want to go with. Farrar Muhammad under the alias David Farrar, pictured in the upper left-hand corner. There are many Masons. Stay in the context what we stand with. The other stuff, whatever you want to do with it. There are many Masons shown in this picture. The development of the MSTA saw the influence of many high-degree black Shriners, Masons, and secret societies, particularly ancient Egyptian Arabic Order of Nobles of the Mystic Shrine. And they say who started by Noble Ali Rafu Pasha and John George in 1893. These secret societies played a major role in the events during the late 20s and 30s and governmental changes in America that have great importance to the events happening presently in the respect to the subject of reparations and the New World Order. I'm going to show you a picture of this. Passed out to all Muslims under the Nation of Islam in 63. Let me watch. That's when I say, hey. And it got a lot of stuff. Written and sent to all students in the Ministry of Islam in the wilderness of Northern America by Elijah Muhammad, servant of Allah, dated 4/2/1936 and reissued 1/18/1963. When I say they taught more science, man, it's a lot of history is in here. So much. What it say? The real Indian is the Negro, aka the Blackamoor. So you don't gotta argue. I don't come to argue. I come from scholarship, man. There's pictures in here. When they say Farrar Muhammad gave out ID cards, and it said Muslim on there, when everybody like to argue with the word Muslim and Muslim, and I say, okay, but we have to explain everything when we break words down in syllables. But I want to show you something that we're going to move on. Because we on good time. But let me show you something that we're going to proceed. Watch this, family. So you can know. Because you don't have to assume anything. When you know, and you can prove things, and that's what the biblical scripture says. What? Well, like everybody like to quote the biblical scripture. I don't care what version you get. 1 Thessalonians 5:21. What it says, I think, prove all things and to hold fast to what is good. What that mean? Prove all things. What things? All things. If you can't stand on it and be called upon it, don't be mad when somebody can prove that what you're talking is bullcrap. Now, I'm going to show you one of the 25,000 identification cards given out by Master Farrar Muhammad in Detroit and Chicago from 1930 to 1934 for what? Registered Muslims, spelled Moslems. So it's a lot of stuff in here. And there's so much wisdom. And I say it's elementary. My students have this. So you saw the picture about the mystic shrine? Watch this. The secret ritual of the secret work of the ancient Arabic Order of Nobles of the Mystic Shrine. The Imperial Grand Council of the ancient Arabic Order of the Nobles of the Mystic Shrine. July 1914, Washington, D.C. So when Moors talk about they sheiks and all that, well, why they not giving the science? Because you saw clearly in the picture that who was all there in there with the prophet. When brothers be saying they don't study, man, I'll show you pictures. Yes, man, all this is Egyptian science. When you study King Menkaure or King Menkaure, understand all the signs and symbols, man. We getting it twisted. We getting things so twisted when we're not understanding the signs and symbols. And when I say, man, no disrespect to no one. When I speak wisdom, I'm welcome in all houses. That's why certain people don't really, man. If Moors read the Circle 7 Quran, it's all about the 18 missing years of so-called Jesus' life and perfecting yourself. I can show you through biblical history and scholarship that the Asiatic man, the black man misnomer, is the father of civilization, proved through biblical and historical proof. Period. That's why they don't want to talk about Ruth, Priscilla, all that. This is scholarship, man. This is the thing that I've written on in academia. I'm going to show you one more thing because we got 20 minutes. And we're going to highlight, that Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. And we're gone. And I'm going to show you where all that science came from. And we gone. You know, it don't take that long. This is school for a whole hour. This history school. You got more than from this. Then you go to school all year and they give us some stuff that you can't even debunk. Why? Because then you don't have nothing to compare it to. And I'm telling you, all this stuff is in the library. I ain't just writing no books. This stuff is old wisdom. I can come with every piece of literature, all the biblical books, from all the Hebrew books that was took out the scriptures. They tell you was lost. Bull crap. All the book of Yasher, the book of the Ohms that tell you, didn't you read this in the book of Yasher? If the Bible asking you a question, didn't you read this in the book of Yasher with a question mark and quotation marks and all that? That means that's a prereq. That means you should have read this before you even jumped to that. And it talks about it, the book of Yasher, all in Joseph, all in the biblical scriptures. When I talk about genealogy and genetically, we talk about the so-called Jew. We connect that to Gad. Is in Nigeria. The Igbo, the Igbo. Prove things that can be proven. Was practicing science a long time ago when I show people the stole. I'm going to show you my stole and I'm going to show you the brother back. I'm going to show you pictures. When people don't know, they think it's something come from somewhere else because you don't know who you are. And we don't know history. And I'm going to show you something real old. And I just challenge people to research. Watch. First, I'm going to show you a picture of the brother in 1927, Rabbi Ford in a turban. Turbans were commonly used in black spiritual churches and signified the mystical East when used by black religious magical workers. Mystical East. When brothers say, when I tell brothers about the silent brotherhood of the East, in your Circle 7 Quran, when they talk about this Hebrew God is the deity of Allah. You priests from Kapvistu. He is the oracle of Allah. Who? This Hebrew master. That's the turban. But then watch this. I'm going to show you things. Remember, if you know history, in 1948, that's when the so-called United States created Israel as a state, country, whatever you want to call it. Research the science. This is stuff I did on academia when I said they didn't like my candor, but I was able to prove my research. So I'm going to show you something. Rabbi Mordecai Herman and the Moorish Zionist Temple of the Moorish Jews in 1920s Harlem. Photographed by James Van Deer, Z. The Moorish Zionist Temple of the Moorish Jews. Moors, when I say all the signs and symbols, if you don't understand the so-called 6-point star, the so-called 5-point star, look in the back of these pictures and look at, and they have the so-called Israel flag before Israel was created as a state, and the American flag. Look at the picture. Look in the background of the picture. Look at the Moors. Look at the brother with the fez on in the stove. We arguing over stuff because we're not sitting down researching it. These brothers were studying language, everything. Moorish Latin. And when I say Moorish Latin, it's a mixture of all the languages because we tarried. They tried to say you're pirates, but you ain't no pirates, you're navigators, you're seamen. That's why I said, how did you get around? Because you had to get around if you ain't have no compass, so you understood the stars, just like right now. You know? So these things that we can show and improve, man. And we come from scholarship, no biased place. So, we almost done. This is the wisdom that one of my students, man, and it's fun when I meet people, man, in life. And I met one of the brothers from Flint, and one of the brothers in college, he was like, man, right now we're in history class, And they're talking about Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and they're this and this. This is so great. I said, brother, let me tell you something. It's research. I did this on college campus. I come from no bias place that debunk all that Eurocentric propaganda. But we have to know this. We have to know about our scholars, George G.M. James, PhD. We have to know real history. And so we're going to touch on a little bit of real history, man, and then we're done. Watch. Watch this. Just like when I talk about history and I tell brothers, man, we have to really understand what the doctrine of discovery was really about from a historical perspective. We got to really understand, man, that biblical book when a person will throw something at you. And I say, brothers and sisters, if you look at history, why would you go under something that can be proven false? All these deities, all these figures is false. You know? And when we say it don't matter, and I tell brothers and sisters, Allah is nothing outside of yourself. Allah is manifestation of man. That's the whole secret. What they like to say, it's not a secret, it's sacred. Understanding your physical body. All this allegorical symbology, parables, is all symbolizing to your physical temple, Moors. And the person getting you caught up in their pageantry. When I just like, for instance, and we're going to get started with Greek philosophy is stolen Egypt philosophy. And I'm going to leave you with this scripture. I think it's Matthew 5 or 17. But in that scripture, and we have to understand context when the preacher gets you caught up in bullcrap, no matter what color they are, is they'll tell you that you ask a preacher, what does finish mean in that context? When it says it's finished, it's fulfilled. A preacher will tell you, it's over, it's finished. We're not under the law no more. And then you got to be like, okay, well, what law? And then they'll be like, well, because they're just reading. And I say, you have to be a student and a person that research words and break those words down, because what it meant then, it have to mean the same thing today. And you have to understand the context, and you can't arbitrarily explain anything. So that word fulfilled in that context is a Greek word called Plero, P-L-E-E-R-O, which means magnify, bring back to his remembrance. You didn't throw away nothing. You didn't finish nothing. And that's the thing I say, it has nothing to do with nothing physical. It has everything to do with this physical temple. It has to do with your understanding, going back, understanding who you were, bringing it back to your remembrance, magnifying it, glorifying it, standing high on the mountain, understanding who you are. This is nothing magical. In a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, you will be renewed. How? By the mind, by that hippocampus. What? Understanding that wisdom. That's that Holy Spirit. When that knowledge or when that wisdom enter that whole vessel. I mean, that's what it's about, man. It's about scholarship. It's not about arguing with what somebody taught. If you're not a philosopher and a historian, to be like, look, man, we honor and respect all the prophets, but we're gonna connect this stuff to ourselves and keep teaching and operate on this earth plane and be straight up Moorish American Masons. I keep telling Moors, the Masonry and theology is the two trains of thought. If you let somebody tell you Masonry is scary, that's your fault. I promise you. That's your fault. Because they're not telling you that it's real science. They're not telling you it's comedic science. But the Greek philosophy more is stolen Egyptian philosophy. And the teachings of the Egyptian mysteries reach out lands many centuries before it reached Athens, Moors. According to the history, Moors, Pythagoras, after receiving his training in Egypt, returned to his native island, Samos, where he his order for a short time, after which he migrated to where? Croton, C-R-O-T-O-N, around 540 BC, in southern Italy, where his order grew to enormous proportions until his final expulsion from that country. And we are also told that Thales, Thales, these so-called Greek greats in 6 BC, who has also received his education in Egypt, and his associates, Anaximenes, 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 were native of Ionia, Ionia, in Asia Minor, which was a stronghold for the Egyptian mystery schools, which they carried on, Moors. But look, in Sanfors, the Mediterranean world, page 195 and 205. Yep, I will get to that, brother. But similarly, Moors, we are told that that country, that Xenophanes, Xenophanes, and it might not be pronounced with the X. In 576 BC, Parmenius, Zeno, and Melissus were also native of Iona, Ionia. Write these down so you can research it. And they migrated to Ela, Elea, which is in Italy, Moors, and established themselves and spread the teachings of the mysteries. Follow me though. But like in the manner, we are informed that who? Heraclitus in 530 BC, Empedocles, Empedocles, Anaxagoras, Anaxagoras. I want you to follow this because this is what they teach you the kids in school. And Democritus were also natives of Iona, who were interested in physics. Hence, in tracing the course of the so-called Greek philosophy, Moors. Watch this. Watch this. We find that Iona students, after obtaining their education from the Egyptian priests, returned to their native land, while some of them migrated to different parts of Italy, where they established themselves. But consequently, Moors, history makes it clear that the surrounding neighbors of Egypt had all become familiar with the teachings of Egyptian mysteries, many centuries before the Athenians, who in around, I say, 399 BC, sentenced Socrates to death, right? Research their pen. Zeller History of Philadelphia, or Philosophy, excuse me. Hold on, where's my, I'm gonna give you all, you should always have something to compare to. That's one of my students on the other page. He like, man, you giving me stuff for school. I'm like, exactly. On page 112, 127, 170, and page 172. And then also, it caused, subsequently, Moors, it caused Plato and Aristotle to flee for their lives from Athens because philosophy was something foreign and unknown to them, right? Come on, Moors, y'all got to know this. For this same reason, we would expect either the Ionians or the Italians to exert their prior claim to philosophy, right? Since it made contact with them long before it did the Athenians, who were always its greatest enemies until Alexander's conquest to Egypt. Where's my, hold on, now watch this. How did Alexander get to Egypt? I didn't even bring my 1828 Webster Dictionary. If you don't have it, all my students have it. When we talk about Hellenistic and the Hellenistic language, and it talked about Alexander the Greek and how he got there. How did he get from Europe to Asia or Africa or Kebalan to the Exxon Sea? It's a passage, the water, where he made a pharaoh by force. Who? Serapis Christos. That's the Greek perspective. And what's the Italian one? Caesar Borgia, the picture you see in the churches. I mean, this is stuff that can be proven. You can research the whole history of Caesar Borgia, and you can see who it is. You can research the whole history of Serapis Christos, of where that fake Greek mythology come from. It's just simple. It's just simple scholarship. There's nothing to be mad about. But the Ionians and the Italians made no attempt to claim the authorship of philosophy because they were all aware that the Egyptians were the true authors. And you can also check Moors. After the death of Aristotle, his Athenian pupils, without the authority of the state, undertook to compile a history of what? Philosophy, recognized at that time as what? Sophia, or wisdom of the Egyptians. I can show you all in the biblical scriptures how they use all European and Greek words. Sophia, Hebrew, all that Greek gibberish, Christian, Cretan, the Edomite, all that. That's not ancient. When I tell Paleo, when they say they speak Hebrew, I said, what you mean? But which that had became the current and traditional in the ancient world. Which compilation became, compilation Moors, because it was produced by who? Philosophy. In spite of the fact that the Greeks were its greatest enemies and they persecutors, right? And they were annihilating people, the foreigners that talk that science. This can all be researched. That's why the so-called Greek philosophy is stolen Egyptian philosophy, which is first spread to the Iona, Ionia, and then we can say to Italy, and then to Athens. And it must be remembered that at this remote period of Greek history, Thales to Aristotle in 640 BC, 322 BC, the Ionians were not Greek citizens, but at first Egyptian subjects and later Persian subjects. I told you can research the history, Zeller's History of Philosophy, page 37, 46, 58, page 66, 83, 112, 127. When brothers be like, how can we say we can speak on something if we're not going to research history? No brother just fell from no heaven. We have to go with the history that debunks the Eurocentric propaganda, because it's scholarship that's been done. I mean, there's so many brothers that did the research. William Turner's History of Philosophy, page 34, 39, 45, 53. Roger Student, History of Philosophy. B.D. Alexander, History of Philosophy. Sanford's The Mediterranean World. If you see a brief sketching of the Egyptian Empire, you can see that it'll make it clear that Asia Minor, or Iona, was the ancient land of the Hittites, who were not known by any other name in ancient days. That's why in the biblical scripture it try to tell you and research this, and I think it's in Deuteronomy, where it says a Morite, a Hittite cannot enter the kingdom of God. You gotta understand who put that in there. If that's the case, that's the so-called genealogy of Jesus, which is Yahshua the Messiah, because that's all Canaanite. That's all lineage. Ruth the Moabitess, if they want to talk about the figures. Moors, according to you can research history. What my empress say she said I got 7 minutes. Okay. According to Diodorus and Mattheo, the high priest in Egypt, 2 columns were found at Nisa, one of the goddess Isis and the other of the goddess Osiris, and on the latter of which the god declared that had led any army into India to the sources of Danube, Danube, Moors, and as far as the ocean. This means, of course, Moors. Man, because we got to understand titles and names. I said if people students, we'll get into breaking things down and misnomers and titles. You know, we'll break. It's just like a person that have a dad, father, a CEO. Those are titles. You know what I mean? And as we trace things, we have to go with the earliest traces. You know, if we say a particular person was a particular origin, a Nazarene or a particular figure, and how they pronunciate their own name, if it wasn't a J in a Hebrew dialect. Like for instance, if I'm a certain tribe, or for instance, and in the biblical scriptures, Acts 24 and 5, it said this pestilent brother is a ringleader of the Nazarenes. So the Nazarenes, so then the next thing we got to do is start doing some research. Who are the Nazarenes? What language do the Nazarenes speak? So it's so much history that we have to connect that to. And once we do that, we say, okay, well, it wasn't a J in there in whatever Hebrew alphabet. Because a Hebrew is a tribe, not one particular nationality. And that's a whole other teaching, you know? But you can also look in the Sentushet. These are old biblical books. The Senusert, the first one, during the 12th dynasty, about 1900 BC, conquered the whole seacoast of India, beyond the Ganges to the Eastern Ocean. You can look up all this stuff, man. You know? So we can debunk Eurocentric propaganda all over. The chronology, the order of Greek philosophers. It's speculation. History knows nothing about the early life and training of the Greek philosophers. And this is true, not only for the pre-Socratic philosophers, Moors, but also of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, who appeared in history about the age of 18 and began to teach at 40. And as a body of men, they were undesirable to the state. Right? They were consequently persecuted and driven into hiding and secrecy, right? And under those circumstances, they kept no record of their activities. And this was done in order to conceal their activity. and after the conquest of Egypt Moors by Alexander the Greek, and the seizure of looting of the royal library at Alexandria, Aristotle's plan to upstart Egyptian philosophy was subsequently carried out by members of his school. Theophastrus, Androsius of Rhodes of Eudemus, whom soon found themselves confronted with the problem of a chronology of a history of philosophy. That's in the introduction of Their History of Philosophy, page 13. And throughout this effort, there has been much speculation concerning the date of birth of philosophers, whom the public knew very little about, Moors. As early as the 3rd century BC, 274 to 194 BC, you see Eratosthenes, Eratosthenes. These are things that Greek philosophers in the 2nd century around BC, all these fake figures that didn't create anything. And George G. James, the stuff has been done. The compilation of history of Greek philosophy was the plan of Aristotle, executed his school. Aristotle decided to compile a history of Greek philosophy. He must have known his wishes to his pupils. You know, no Egyptians taught anyone, because why? Everything was done how? Their writing style, signs and symbols, hieroglyphics. And that's why if you don't understand the hieroglyphics and the signs and symbols, then you're lost. We'd just be basing our stuff on what somebody says. That's why so-called Greek philosophy was alien to the Greeks and their condition of life. You got to remember the period of Greek philosophy, 640 to 322 BC, was a period of internal and external wars, and therefore was what? Unsuitable for producing philosophers. Wasn't nobody going around thinking about philosophy and they were dying? And history support the facts from the times of Thales, the time of Aristotle, the time the Greeks were victims of eternal disunion. On one hand, while on the other hand, they lived in constant fear of invasion from who? The Persians, who were a common enemy to the city-states. This is research. That fighting, that inward fighting with one another. They found themselves busy fighting the Persians, who soon dominated them and became their masters. You can research the science. From the 6th century BC, the territory from the coast of Asia Minor to India's valley became united under the single power of Persia, whose central territory, Iran, has survived as a national unit to the present day. And more than Persia, expansion was like a nightmare to the Greeks, who dreaded the Persians on account of their invulnerable navy. They had a navy. They organized themselves into leagues and confederacies in order to fight their enemy. You can research this stuff in Sanford's Mediterranean World. It's 3 sources which throw light on the chaotic and the troublesome conditions of this period in Greek history. You can find it. The Persian conquest, after the Persian has conquered the Ions, which can be possibly the ancient Hittites, and made them their subject. You can research that in Pocrates, that history. All through the history, man, you can see research where things come from in the leagues. All documented history that can debunk Eurocentric propaganda, man. Greek philosophy was the offering of the Egyptian mystery system. The Egyptian theory of salvation became the purpose of Greek philosophy. The earliest theory of salvation is the Egyptian theory, Moors. The Egyptian mystery system had its most important object, the deification of man, and taught that the soul of man is liberated from its bodily fetters, could enable him to become godlike and see the gods in this life, attain that beautiful vision, and hold that communion with the immortals. Moors. That's why when brothers, they say, well, what's the Lord's Prayer? What? He wants the same thing on earth as it is in heaven. I mean, the same. What that mean? You don't have to be dead to have your heaven. The heaven is in the hippocampus. Once you understand who you are, once you understand that God within, once you can stand strong on your square and understand your nationality and understand the sciences, understand commerce, understand that you are a business, understand that you can create anything. Don't let nobody just tell you things. Oh man, 501c3 is bad, and they want to explain to you business because they don't even have business background. Well, I have a 501c3. Do you hear me talking like I'm under some European Christianity? And I just have to be honest, Moors. How are you going to do things in your community if you're not an organized business? How are you going to get demolished neighbor houses and things donated to you in your community, organized business? You're just like we're just like the Boys and Girls Club. We're just like the thrift stores. We're just like those. That's why I say nonprofit, a 501c3, you're tax exempt from federal, state. You can have your own education, your own theology, your own schooling. That's the whole thing, the dynamics of a nonprofit. Education, spiritual, religious, scientific, charitable. Research it. That's how we operate. That's how I'm in the state of Arizona. I'm from a little place called Flint, Michigan. That's how I take 50 kids to the Phoenix Suns game. That's how I do all this nonprofit work in the community. And you let some Negro, black, and colored tell you, or nonprofit, or you under some white man. That's idiotic. Well, how they operating? We don't even understand business. And we have to be smart, man, and question things. And I get caught up in our feelings. We have to be able to sit down with that religious book and dissect it. We don't go around with crazy, religiously crazy, and we're not going to take the time, and we have our teachers right here in the flesh. Islam. But we got to know this stuff, Moors. I mean, people don't understand what my empress said I can go for. She said go for 15 more minutes. Okay, I'm going to talk about business and I'm done. Brothers and sisters, we have to understand business. I'm a 501c3. You can look me up on the Arizona Corporation Commission, the Burning Bush Tabernacle Science Temple and School. What we're able to do is to teach our own babies. What we're able to do is to create. What we're able to do is to go into schools and ask for in-kind service and teach kids. Man, I go into schools and the hardest hit funds. I had an Instagram page and everything. You can ask my mother. I was going to the universities in Arizona, to the community colleges, teaching what a 501c3 and what quick claim 30s, and showing kids when they graduate out of high school and college, they can have their own nonprofit business, operating as their own entity, doing things in the community, doing their charitable work in the community, helping kids. Just like I tell brothers and sisters, any skill you have, if you're under the auspices of a nonprofit, that's how you change the neighborhood. That's how you change the infrastructure. You teach it. You get grants through the state. You can go on Michigan Grant Watch, Arizona Grant Watch. You're in Mississippi, you can go on Mississippi Grant Watch. Look out for all the grants, whatever jurisdiction that you fall up under, and see what they help you with. And not only the state and things, but your people in your community. That's how they donate to what you're doing. We can have our own guards and our own temples and our own schools. Debunking Eurocentric propaganda from peace, organized the right way. We already have it. And that's why I'm saying, we're already real. We can teach this stuff. It can be done. But we have to understand business, and we have to understand about pulling our figures together, man. Anybody have a skill and you have some money, how are you going to do something in your community? Spending your money, that's personal assets. That's why I tell every brother, if you don't have a nonprofit in your community, how are you going to change the dynamics of your community? How are you going to teach the sciences? We're going to let these churches, and I have to say this more because I'm speaking from the heart. We're going to let these churches just keep preaching this bull crap. Your preacher know the truth, especially if he is a Mason. Especially if he's a shrine, if he got the fez, because once you cross 32 and 33 degrees, you must practice Al-Islam. Flat out. It's just what it is. But they ain't gonna teach you the facts. They're gonna teach you that pseudo stuff. They're gonna teach you that bull crap. I'm gonna tell you from love and wisdom. I have signed no oath. I'm trying to get my brothers and sisters, I'm bringing something back to us. I'm showing my brothers and sisters that no wisdom, no science, no masonry research who Angelo Solomon is. Research this wisdom. Research this craft. Man, when I talk about in the biblical scriptures, Memphis and Mizraim, that's Egypt. When you see the Europeans, the so-called Italians, when they went to Egypt, when I tell you it's more than 32 and 33 degrees, and if some Prince Hall, some Scottish Rite elder brother tell you that, that's on them. I don't wear the fez and clandestine. I mean, it's something in this fez. It's science and things that can be used. It's nothing spooky. Illuminati, illuminate one, the light ones. Because once you become illuminated, once you become enlightened, you don't fall for propaganda. You don't fall for spookism. You don't argue about religion. You discuss science, because science can be proven, and you apply that where to your holistically to your life, and understand that this arcana, that this what we like to call, what people like to call this alchemy, is all about you. Come on, Morris, man. Join in. Be down with it. But I love you all, family, man, and that's what this about, man. We are master masons. This is a science, man. This is no plaything. This is no religious dogma. If any more telling you like you got to be some Nation of Islamism or something, that's not higher science. Because the more a master adept, you understand the triple rows of the adept chamber. And as you climb to higher degrees, you understand the symbology, the allegorical symbology. You understand all that. You understand the parable. You could connect what's above to below. You can connect all the symbology. You have to. That's why I say we study everything. Some more is this the clock of destiny. I say, well, how can you this the zodiac laws? That don't even make. That's not even logical, because the zodiac laws connect to man, connects to everything here. It's science in there, things that can be proven. How history was added on from certain things. It breaks what a mason. It breaks the etymology down. We scientists, but some brothers just caught up in religious dogma. I'm telling you. And if that's the case, we might as well stay in the church. I'm serious, man. We have to really do this, and that's why I like to speak eloquently, man, about this science, man, because I've been through all the houses, and I've grown up in science, man. I've been through the churches and things, man. We all come from a background. Noble Drew Ali come from a place. If you understand history and science and see where brothers come from, that's how you can able to see what's real and what's not. How you gonna understand what's real and what's not if you haven't had some bull crap and something that's real? That don't even make sense. You would think the bull crap is so good, and then we accept stuff that's been given to us. That don't even make sense. And that's what I'm saying. We don't gravitate to figures. We gravitate to the wisdom and the science. And everything that we speak on, we can connect it to history. Yes, we're spiritual people. We connect everything. No Allah is nothing outside of yourself. No more science is no Islam. More science is everything. It's astrology, astronomy, civics. It's all that, man. If a more say it's not, then how? How can you say it's a divine and holy creed? How can you say you 720 if you don't understand the material and the spiritual, Moors? How can you respect and obey all the laws and the prophets? I mean, let me read our card. This is your nationality and identification card for the Moorish Science Temple of America and the birthright for the Moorish Americans, etc. We honor all the divine prophets, Jesus, and I'm saying which is Yahshua, Muhammad, Buddha, and Confucius. May the blessings of the God, our Father, Allah, be upon you that carry this card. I do hereby declare that you are a Muslim under the divine law of the Holy Quran of Mecca. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I mean, that's what it says. Could we dissect? We could. But why are we going to go against something if we're saying we're studying sciences, and I say we build bridges and we honor and respect all the laws and the prophets? Because we can know where a person is coming from. Exactly. Mo, cryptic masonry. Exactly. We gotta know it. And if you ask any brother, if you have a father or anything that's in masonry, and you were real Moor, if you're under the temple, or if you're studying from a real person that's a Moor, a European masonry Prince Hall, they'll tell you, because you should know the science. They all of the catchphrases, man. That's how they do it. That mess don't mean nothing. You're a traveler from the east, bullcrap. That's bullcrap. In order to go from the east, you got to go to the west. I'm telling you, that's all those little dumb catchphrases. That's nothing. And that's what they turn into, a joke. When I say, man, those are allegory, parable, symbology. Ain't nobody dying. We got to understand the symbology of this. You say you're a traveler from the east. Well, you got to go through the west. But they're not going to tell certain things. I'm telling you, man, most brothers I know that's masonries, man, everything has to be given to them. And it's a higher science. Like, for instance, when I go to the Philosophical Society, and Haram would be, and that's nothing. I'm gonna do a whole thing about that whole science. That's the widow son. That it's a particular reason they call you the widow son. It's nothing. It's all just gibberish, you know. But when I go to the Philosophical Society, I'm doing a lecture there, A lot of Prince Hall masonries, they praise Manly P. Hall. They praise Manly P. Hall, and I say, man, that's no science. That's 32 and 33 degrees. They all were taught by Moors. Anna Blavatsky, that so-called secret doctrine, all taught by Bays. I showed y'all Pascal Randolph. I just showed y'all Pascal Randolph, the brother back in the early days, when he taught some of the science. One of the Rosicrucians with the that's the Holy Quran is about. That brother was from Africa. I showed you the picture of the brother. That's why I be laughing. I said, all we got, if you're a historian, you can just go back through history. I showed brothers the picture of Pascal Beverly Randolph. I got the wisdom right on the book. He got a whole bunch of wisdom, you know. Watch this. Hold on. And I'm going to close with this. Watch this, Morris. Pascal Beverly Randolph. Pascal Beverly Randolph. Research who the brother is. That's all we got to do is research. I'm going to show you picture. I'm going to show you the history of the Confederate Cherokees. I'm going to show you if the Moors ruled Spain for 700 years, what type of went over there? A certain you. So what would the brothers having sex with? Those type of women. Connect history. It's that simple. This is one of the books, these old books, Sexual Magic, Pascal Beverly. This was, let's see, this was when was this wisdom printed? They redid it in 88, but it come from, dang, what did it say? 1886. Dang. Deep wisdom in here. After Death, Disembodiment of Man, Human Immortality, 3rd edition, Randolph Pascal Beverly Publishing Company, 1886. I mean, the work already been done, man. When we talk about these signs and symbols. Researching history, man. Note the two thoughts. That's why I tell Moors, if you don't have the clock of destiny, I have them on. That's them, babe. We get it with the wisdom. We don't let nobody keep us away from wisdom. And that's what pseudo academia do. That's what the enemy, no matter what color it is, it keep you from researching. It'll tell you it's no more. It'll get you caught up in that particular figure that's dead and gone, but you won't even research the wisdom and the science. That's a trick. That's an oath trick. Just like when I no disrespect to nobody. It's like when I destroyed that film. I forget what it was a film. It was called something. And brother was watching. They was like, yep, the film did say that Africa was named after a European. I destroyed that. I said, that's bullcrap from scholarship. Well, no Africa named after no European. You can go on my page. I destroyed that on the college campus. Destroyed that pseudo academia with proof. You know? But yeah, man, no thought process come from the West, man. Science, masonry. You are Moorish American. You are a master mason. I mean, if not, why you think certain one call themselves sons of Muslims? I'm telling you, it's so much history you can research and connect this masonry to. I promise you. Angelo Solomon, all the figures you can connect. That's why certain figures wear the fez in clandestine. Look what clandestine means. Secret, not a birthright. This fez is historical. Moors. Also, I'm going to leave you with this. In the biblical scriptures, it talk about your turban and your bonnet. In the biblical scriptures, you can find it. Research, it talks about the followers of Yahshua, the garment, all their clothes and everything. In the biblical scriptures, it talk about your turban, and in the biblical scriptures, it talk about wearing a bonnet, which in Islam, they call it kufi. But in the biblical scriptures, it's called a bonnet. We wear the bonnet as well, you know. Man, I can touch all, I can go all through history and connect the dots of history, man, to where we get out that Negro, black, and color stuff. And people get mad when you stand on that and be like, okay, well, what was... I understand that Negro is a color, just like Negro beans, but so that's not a nationality. So what was your nationality before 1825? Ask a teacher, ask a professor. They're going to tell you. They're going to tell you. Just like they gave Empress of the Washita Moors land back in 96. They know who the Moors are. Just like when I demonstrated that Louisiana Purchase, all that wasn't purchased, all that stuff was here in America. I demonstrated this stuff, man. on college campuses. A lot of stuff is in the museums that debunk all Eurocentric propaganda. But they're not just going to give it to you. One of the professors told me when I was getting my master's, that's the work that you should be doing. And he was amazed that, people went under it because because you can stand strong on this. He was like, you're not coming from no biased place. I've done the research. We don't have to argue with the Bible with nobody, nothing. We can just say, okay, well, the Bible says this is what they say. We can debunk it from anything and with history. So I love you all, Moors. Stand strong on your square. Love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, my 2 cents, health, and wealth.